There are people who move through life with a quiet composure that others admire. They rarely raise their voice. They don't snap. They don't explode. When tension fills a room, they soften it. When someone crosses a line, they smile and say it's fine. When disappointment arrives, they adjust, accommodate, rationalize. From the outside, they seem calm, balanced, emotionally mature, almost immune to anger. But inside, something else is happening. It often begins in small, ordinary moments. A friend cancels plans again, and you tell yourself it doesn't matter. A partner says something that stings, and you brush it off with humor. A coworker takes credit for your effort, and you let it slide, convincing yourself it's not worth the friction. Each time, the reaction feels reasonable, controlled, even kind. You feel proud of your ability to stay level-headed. And yet, beneath that calm surface, there is a faint tension. A quiet unease that doesn't fully go away. A sense that something has been swallowed but not digested. It's subtle enough to ignore, but persistent enough to follow you home. People who never get angry often don't see themselves as suppressing anything. In their mind, they are choosing peace. They believe anger is unnecessary, immature, or dangerous. They tell themselves that staying calm is a sign of strength. That being agreeable keeps relationships intact. That letting things go makes life easier. And sometimes it does. At least in the short term. But over time, a deeper question begins to surface, usually not as words, but as a feeling. A dull exhaustion. A sense of emotional distance from others. A quiet resentment that appears out of nowhere and feels out of character. A strange numbness towards situations that should matter more than they do. Eventually, the question forms clearly enough to be noticed. What happens to anger when a person never allows themselves to feel it? Anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions. Many people associate it only with aggression, loss of control, or harm. But at its core, anger is a boundary emotion. It arises when something important has been crossed, ignored, or violated. It signals that a need exists, that a limit has been reached, that something matters. When anger is allowed to exist, even quietly, it provides information. It helps a person recognize where they stand in relation to others. It clarifies values. It protects emotional territory. But when anger is consistently suppressed, it doesn't disappear. It loses its voice, but not its presence. For people who never get angry, the suppression usually begins early. Often long before they have language for it. In families where conflict felt unsafe, anger may have been associated with rejection, punishment, or withdrawal of love. Expressing displeasure might have led to being ignored, shamed, or labeled as difficult. In those environments, calmness becomes a survival strategy. The child learns, quietly and effectively, that harmony is maintained by self-control. That love is conditional on being easy. That expressing anger risks losing connection. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Anger becomes something to intercept before it reaches awareness. Not because the person is weak, but because they are highly attuned to the emotional climate around them. As adults, these individuals often pride themselves on being understanding. They give others the benefit of the doubt. They rationalize behavior that hurts them. They explain away patterns that leave them feeling small. They tell themselves stories that make discomfort tolerable. He didn't mean it like that. She's just stressed. It's not a big deal. I don't want to overreact. Each explanation smooths the surface. Each one also pushes anger further inward. In everyday interactions, this looks like polite agreement even when something feels wrong. Smiling through discomfort. Offering reassurance when you're the one who needs it. Absorbing emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. choosing silence over tension. From the outside, it looks like emotional intelligence. Inside, it often feels like shrinking. The psychological mechanism beneath this pattern is not indifference, but fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of being seen as too much. Fear that anger will damage relationships or expose vulnerability. For some, anger feels dangerously close to abandonment. For others, it feels like a loss of control that once had consequences. So instead of feeling anger, the mind reroutes it. It turns into fatigue, or self-doubt, or quiet resentment. Sometimes it becomes anxiety, a constant scanning of the environment to make sure everything is okay. Sometimes it becomes numbness, a dull emotional flatness that protects against overwhelm. Sometimes it turns inward as self-criticism, because anger needs a target, and the safest one is the self. This is where the cost of chronic self-control begins to show. People who never get angry often struggle to identify their own needs. Not because they don't have them, but because those needs were learned to be negotiable, optional, secondary. Over time, the person becomes highly skilled at adjusting to others while losing clarity about themselves. They may find it hard to answer simple questions like what they want, what they need, or what feels fair. They may feel disconnected from their own preferences. They may sense that something is missing but struggle to name it. Relationships can start to feel unbalanced. Not overtly toxic, but subtly draining. The person gives more than they receive, listens more than they are heard, adapts more than they are met. And because they rarely express anger, others may never realize there is a problem. This creates a painful paradox. The very behavior meant to preserve connection slowly erodes it. Not outwardly, but internally. There comes a moment, often quiet and private, when the emotional weight becomes noticeable. It might be a sudden irritation that feels disproportionate, a sharp internal reaction to something small, or a sense of emotional distance from people you care about, without knowing why. This is usually the point where the deeper realization begins to emerge. Never getting angry is often not peace. It is self-abandonment that has learned to look calm. This recognition doesn't arrive dramatically. It arrives softly, with a pause, with a slight ache, with the unsettling clarity that something important has been missing from the emotional picture. Anger, when healthy, is not violence. It is information. It tells you where you end and others begin. When it is consistently ignored, the self becomes blurred. Boundaries weaken. The person remains kind, but less present. Composed, but less alive. The people who never get angry are often deeply empathetic. They feel others' emotions easily. They sense shifts in mood. They are skilled at maintaining emotional equilibrium. But that sensitivity, when unbalanced, comes at the expense of their own internal signals. Over time, the suppressed anger waits. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It settles quietly beneath the surface, influencing mood, energy, and self-perception. It shapes relationships subtly, often through withdrawal rather than confrontation. This is why some people who never get angry eventually feel disconnected from joy as well. Emotional suppression is rarely selective. When one emotion is muted long enough, others follow. Understanding this does not require immediate action. It does not demand confrontation or change. It simply asks for recognition, for the willingness to notice that calmness has a cost. That emotional control can be both a strength and a wound. To see anger not as an enemy, but as a messenger that has been waiting patiently. When anger is ignored, it does not disappear. It turns inward. It becomes quieter, heavier, and harder to trace. And it waits, not to destroy, but to be heard. For those who have lived their lives without visible anger, This understanding can feel unsettling, but it can also feel relieving, because it reframes the struggle not as a flaw, but as a history, a learned adaptation, a way of surviving that no longer needs to be permanent. And in that quiet recognition, something shifts. Not outwardly, not dramatically, but internally. A small space opens where anger is no longer forbidden, just acknowledged. And sometimes, that is where the inner life begins to feel whole again.